3, 2, 1, and we're live. Hello, everyone. You're watching vJUG, and my name is Alex Shalaev, and I'm very happy to know that you are all there watching and listening to this session. Today is gonna be an excellent session. We have two speakers, Simon Ritter and Martijn. I'm sorry about that. What I was talking about. Two speakers, Simon and Martijn. I'm sorry, it just the YouTube video in another tab started and spooked me. So the good news is that we know that the video is running, the stream is going live to YouTube, and we're gonna start with the session in a moment. But what I would like to do before, I would like to say a couple of words, and I would like to share my screen now. So let's start. You should be able to see the slides. vJUG, it's a virtual Java user group, which means that a Java user group that gathers online, which gives us the flexibility to invite the best speakers. Today's session will be the future of Java and OpenJDK and how it will impact you. The speakers are Simon Ritter and Martijn. You can follow them on Twitter. They go by @SpeakJava and @Kariana. You should do that. And if you have any questions that you are not comfortable or don't want to ask now, or will come up with the questions later, you just ping them on Twitter and they will be happy to respond, I'm sure in it. If you're new to vJUG, please gather to the vJUG.com. If you're watching this session on YouTube, that is our online user group website, where you can find the past sessions, the schedule, and everything, information about. If you want to actually receive the invites to the further and scheduled talks, then we manage the mailing list and all the information on the meetup.com. So meetup.com/vJUG. You can join the group, you can register, you will be able to receive the information about the upcoming meetups, you can RSVP, you can post questions, and so on. So those are two resources where we gather. And if you're new to vJUG, you should definitely come and join us. It's wonderful to be a part of a Java user group without actually needing to leave your home. Some resources about the current session. We are running a vJUG Slack. If you go through that URL, go.gl/ELGDCP. That is a short link to join the Slack channel. And if you join the live session channel in that Slack team, this is a channel where we have the communication and questions about any session. So join that. You will be able to talk to other people watching. You will also be able to ask questions to the speakers. And I, as a host, will do my best to forward them at the opportune moment. Please share this group, the vJUG and the session, this particular session, to invite more people. The more, the merrier. Any social network will do. Twitter is my personal favorite. And if you have any feedback, you can ping us on Twitter. It will be either @vJUG or @Shalaev if you want to tell something to me or mention me directly. So this would be fantastic. If the quality of the video is not up to your expectations, you can use the YouTube cog icon, the settings, and raise the quality of the stream to the highest possible. I think it should go at least 720, maybe 1080. So if it's blurry, then probably you need to adjust the settings on your widget. So, and now this is a little bit strange, but I felt that I need to do this. So currently I'm employed by Oracle. I'm a developer advocate for project GraalVM at Oracle Labs. But in this presentation, I am an individual. Everything that I say are my own personal views. So don't hold me or Oracle to that. I will try to, I don't know anything on the subject. So I try to refrain from reading the documents myself to be as removed from this as possible, not to pose any conflict. So I will be a host and a moderator here. I will pass your questions to the speakers, but I will personally share no opinion or information on Java, the future of Java licensing. Frankly, I don't have that information as well, because I did my best to avoid learning about that. So please be mindful about that. And yeah, I hope this will not be any trouble for me personally. So with all that said and done, let's go back to the session. I will stop presenting my screen. I know that the video is running fine. The sound is running fine. We have no complaints in the Slack channel. And with all that, let's introduce the speakers and let's give them a word. So Simon, hi, let's start from you. Simon Ritter is the Deputy CTO of Azul Systems. And yeah, yes. Hi, Simon. Yeah, okay. I'm sure you have a word or two about yourself. If you have that on the slides, we can postpone that later. But if not,
no, I'll just do a quick introduction. Yeah, okay. So I am Simon Ritter. I am now the Deputy CTO of Azul Systems, as you said. I worked for Oracle for 5 years before that, and Sun Microsystems for 14 years before that. So I have been using Java since JDK 1.0 and have been kind of heavily involved in sort of Java. Okay.
Excellent. And our second speaker, and I'm terribly sorry because last time I tried to introduce you, I lost your video feed, Martijn, but I really hope that you're there. So I will introduce you anyway. So our second speaker, who you are not seeing on the screen right now, hopefully due to temporary connection issues, is Martijn Verburg. He is the person who you probably know as a diabolical developer. He's also a CEO of jClarity. He's a member and the co-leader of, oh, look, Martijn is back. Hey.
Hey, sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to introduce you. And he also a leader or one of the founders or an important person at the AdoptOpenJDK project. So Martijn, I just literally read your Twitter bio. So if you have a couple of words to introduce yourself, now is the right time.
Cool. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Martijn. I lead the London Java user group, and through that entity, I sit on the Java standards body. I helped, I'm a benevolent dictator of sort on the AdoptOpenJDK build farm for OpenJDK, and sort of interfere in other Java ecosystem and community efforts.
Excellent. So as you can see, we have two extraordinary people here, both experts, and I'm sure they will have a lot of share with you about the future of Java OpenJDK, how it impacts you. Again, if you have any questions, and I think this session will heavily depend on questions, so don't be shy, post them into the Slack team #live session channel, and we will try to answer them to the best of our abilities. So without further ado, Simon, I think you were the first to start the session. So if you could share your screen now, or if you just want to talk into the camera, the stage is yours.
Let's just share my screen. Hopefully you can see that now. And then I go to PowerPoint. And slideshow, it was that. Okay, so can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, excellent. Right, I am going to do a short presentation on what the changes are that will be affecting you in terms of using Java. Oh, no, there we go. And then Martijn will chip in at the end with some information around the AdoptOpenJDK side of things. But we talked about this beforehand, and this is the way that we decided to divide it up. Really, the idea of this is to give you some information reasonably quickly, and then we can delve into questions so that we can clear up any misunderstandings that people have. So we've titled this as Java is still free. And that's the important message to get across. is that a lot of people think that Java will no longer be free as of the beginning of next year, but the reality is, yes, Java is still free. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about terminology, because one of the things I see a lot in terms of people talking about the changes to Java is they use these terms and sometimes they don't use them correctly. And that can really lead to confusion. So I want to just clarify what we mean by Java and OpenJDK. So the first thing is we have Java SE, the Java Standard Edition. Now, this is the core piece of Java. It's the specification that defines the minimum set of things that you have to have in order to call an implementation Java. So this defines the syntax of the language. It defines the requirements of what the JVM must do, but not actually how it does it. And it defines the core libraries that you need. This, as I'm sure most people are aware, is defined through the Java community process. As Martijn said, he's on the JCP Executive Committee, so am I, with Azul. And then there are JSRs, Java Specification Requests, which define exactly what the specification is, and then create a TCK, which is the Testing Compatibility Kit. I'm on the expert group for the Java SE standard as of Java 9, Java SE 9, 10, 11, and 12 at the moment. So that's what Java SE is. Java SE is the sort of core piece of specification. Then you have the Java Development Kit, the JDK. And the JDK is the binary implementation of Java SE. So it's what you need in to actually run Java and actually use Java, compile Java. So it has to include everything that's defined in Java SE, but it can also be a superset of that. If you look at things like OpenJDK, OpenJDK also includes the Nashorn scripting engine. That's not part of the Java SE specification, but it is part of the JDK that you get when you build the source code. So Java Development Kit is the binary implementation of Java SE, and you have to test it using the TCK to make sure that it conforms to the specification. Then we have the OpenJDK, which is the open source project, which is the source code that's the reference implementation for the Java SE standard. So every JSR, in theory, should have three things. It should have a specification, it should have a TCK, and it should have a reference implementation to prove that it can be built. OpenJDK, since Java SE 7, has been the reference implementation for the Java SE standard. Then we have OpenJDK binary. And this is where sometimes we get a little bit of confusion, because OpenJDK on its own is the source code project. It's the source code that you use to create the binary. And then binary is what you get from building that source code. And different people can create binaries for different distributions. So Oracle do it, Azul do it, AdoptOpenJDK do it. They're all building an OpenJDK binary. So they're all using the same source code as the base and building the source code from that. So that's the terminology that I want to make sure that people understand exactly what we're talking about there. Okay, so now, if we think about the Java platform today, what we have is something which we can consider to be stable. And the reason I say that is because if you think about the history of Java and moving from one version of Java to another, we've been pretty confident that if you take an application that was written on version, say, 6, and you moved it to version 7, that it would run without any problem. Now, okay, there have been a few things along the way that have kind of caught us out. So the introduction of assertions in JDK 1.4, the introduction of enumerations in Java SE 5, those were small things that did affect backwards compatibility. But on the whole, up until today, backwards compatibility, stability of the platform has been very good, and it's been a core concern of Sun Microsystems and then Oracle after that. So stability is good, stable. The second thing we can say is that we have a platform that's secure. Now, I know that there are security issues that come up in all sorts of different ways, but what I mean by this is that we are used to having a platform where when a version comes out, it's not left like that. Every 3 months, we get an update. If there are security patches that need to be applied to address concerns, things like Meltdown, things like Spectre, then those can be included in the update. So every 3 months, there's a scheduled update which can include security patches. So we're confident that we have a secure platform where any issues will be addressed quickly. And in fact, if there's something that's a very critical thing, you don't need to wait until the next patch. Oracle will issue a new patch straight away as soon as they've got a fix for it. And then the other thing that we're used to with Java is free, because we're all used to going to oracle.java.com, downloading the JDK from there, using it on our machines, downloading the updates, and doing that without having to pay anybody to use that JDK. So those are the three things that we're used to. Now, what's changing? Okay, so the first thing that I'm sure everybody's already aware of is that we have a new release model for the OpenJDK. In the past, we've had anywhere between a little bit over 2 years and it's about 4.5 years between major releases of the JDK. Oracle decided in September of last year that they were going to change that. And they wanted to move the platform forward more quickly. So they were going to have 2 releases of the JDK, 2 major releases, every year, in March and in September. And we've seen that already because JDK 10 was released in March, only 6 months after JDK 9. And next week, we will see JDK 11 launched 6 months after JDK 10. The reason behind this is primarily because the developers want OpenJDK to be more agile. Obviously, in terms of how we develop software now, we primarily use an agile approach to responding to changes in the requirements more quickly. We're able to add new features more quickly and move away from the old waterfall style of doing things. So what the OpenJDK developers want to do is to do the same thing. So we can get new features from the JDK more quickly, rather than having to wait 2, 3, or even 4 years for even a small change to the specification. We can do it in 6 months. So it's a much better way of getting Java to move forward more quickly. The way that they're going to do that is by changing the way that they approach development. In the past, what would happen is that a set of features would be planned for a major release. And then those features would be developed, and only when all of them were ready would that particular release be provided. So it would be released when all the features were ready. And we've seen, most recently with JDK 9, that with modularity, there were some issues where people were not quite happy with the way that that was going to work. Oracle went back, they made some changes, and it got delayed. So it was about 3.5 years between JDK 8 and JDK 9. Now, rather than doing it that way, where you plan the features that are going to go into a specific release, we simply say, okay, every 6 months, whatever is ready at that point will be included in the release. Now, it's a little bit different to that. It's not actually waiting until right at the very day, but it's clear to see which features are going to be ready in time for the release. And then if anything still needs more work, it can be delayed to the next release. And it means you're only going to have to wait another 6 months if you need more time. You don't actually have to wait 2 or 3 years before a new feature comes out. So the other thing that has changed is that Oracle are saying that with this new release model of having a release every 6 months, it's rapidly going to become impractical to provide long-term support for all releases. In the past, the way it's worked is that obviously the current release has updates, but also the previous release has updates for a certain amount of time overlapping the new one. Oracle said, well, it's not practical to do that for all these releases. So they're going to switch to the idea of a long-term support model. And this is the kind of thing that Ubuntu use, where they say, okay, a particular release is long-term support, that gets updates. Other ones are going to be feature releases. They don't get updates beyond when the next update comes or the next release comes out. Oracle have said that in terms of long-term support releases, there will be one every 3 years. To get things started, they said JDK 8 would be a long-term support release because lots of people were using it. They wanted to continue getting updates for a while. They've now announced that JDK public updates will stop in January of next year for commercial users. So if you're using it in an enterprise, then the updates will stop in January of next year. For non-commercial users, so if you're sitting at your desktop playing Minecraft, then you will get updates until the end of 2020. So you'll get another nearly 2 years of updates beyond when the commercial ones will stop. The next long-term support release is JDK 11. So that comes out next week. That's our next long-term support release. Ones after that, because it's every 3 years, JDK 17, JDK 23, and so on. In terms of JDK 9 and JDK 10, those are both feature releases, which means they only get updates for 6 months, which means we've had the 2 updates for JDK 9, we've had the 2 updates for JDK 10. There will be no more updates, public or otherwise, for either JDK 9 or JDK 10. Which Oracle JDK binary to use? Now, in the past, because we've been used to just going to java.oracle.com, that's where we get our Java from, typically. And that's the Oracle branded binary. You go there, you have to accept the terms of the Oracle binary code license for Java SE. That has the associated field of use restrictions, which basically say that you can't use it in an embedded environment, you can't use it in a single purpose device, but you can use it for free on a desktop or in a server. So most people just go, okay, I'm using it on desktop, I'm using it on the server, that's fine, it's free. As of last year, when JDK 9 came out, Oracle also decided to start producing a second binary. And this was going to be an OpenJDK binary, coming back to what I was saying about terminology. So they use the source code of the OpenJDK and they just build that. So they don't add anything to it. They just build the source code of the OpenJDK and they create a JDK binary distribution from that. That has the same license as the OpenJDK source code. So it's a GPL v2 with class path exception. Class path exception is so that you're not affected by the GPL license, so you don't have to provide the source code to your application if you ship it with the Java runtime. No restrictions in terms of field of use. You can use it in embedded, you can use it in single-use devices. In terms of updates, the security and bug fix updates are only going to be for 6 months, and that applies to all JDKs. There is no concept in terms of Oracle's OpenJDK binary of a long-term support release. They will provide 2 scheduled updates, and then when the next release comes out, no more. That also means that there's going to be no overlap of updates with the previous version. So again, 6 months of updates. When that finishes, move to the next one. Now, to make life easier, Oracle are also converging binaries. And I mentioned that we have this idea of Java SE as the standard, which is the minimum set of requirements to be called Java. OpenJDK is a superset of that, which includes things like Nashorn. And then the Oracle JDK binary is a superset of that. So they include a number of additional features from, or in JDK 10 and earlier, they include a number of additional features above and beyond what you get in OpenJDK. Their goal with JDK 11, which they have actually achieved, is to eliminate differences between the Oracle JDK and the OpenJDK from the point of view of functionality. So there will be no superset in terms of the Oracle JDK. It will be exactly the same in terms of features, functionality, as the OpenJDK binary that you can create from the source code. To do that, Oracle are doing 2 things, or have done 2 things, I should say. The first is that they have contributed a number of the previously closed source components that were part of the Oracle JDK binary to the OpenJDK source code project. The most obvious of those are things like Flight Recorder and Mission Control, which are the tools that you can use to monitor your Java applications and see what it's doing in terms of performance. There's a few other things like application class data sharing, but these are things that have been contributed to the OpenJDK source code project. The other thing they've done is to remove certain things from the Oracle JDK. The most obvious of these are the browser plugin, which means there's no more applet support in JDK 11. Java Web Start is no longer provided in JDK 11, and Java FX has been separated out. Java FX is still available as a separate project, so it's a separate project under the broader OpenJDK umbrella, and there is actually a binary that you can download already for JDK 11 that's been produced by the community. And I have to give a shout out to Gluon and Johan Voss, who's done a lot of fantastic work on that. So there's also a very important consideration that we have to understand about backwards compatibility. And if you look at the way, as I said, that in the past, we've been very confident that you could take an application from JDK 6, JDK 7, JDK 8, and it would just run. For JDK 9 and onwards, things change a little bit. And this is a quote from Oracle Product Management, and they say, clean applications that just depend on java.se should just work. Obviously, that's a little less than reassuring. I would rather see they will just work, but there are reasons that they say should just work. And one of the reasons for this is that JDK has been around, Java's been around for a long time, and we've added more and more features to it, but we've never done anything about removing old features that very few people use and kind of tidying up, doing some housekeeping on the platform itself. So JDK 9 started this. It was quite small. They removed some deprecated APIs. First time in Java's history that deprecated APIs had actually been removed. So there was 6 methods, 1 class that was removed, and JDK 10 removed 1 package, 6 classes, 9 methods, and 1 field that had all been deprecated previously. Various redundant features were eliminated, things like the JHat tool, the Java Virtual Machine Tools interface, HProf agent went away, and a whole swathe of GC options around things like incremental concurrent mark sweep disappeared as well. And a significant number of command line flags got removed. So if you look at JDK 9, 187 -XX flags were removed. And that kind of gives you an idea of just how many there are if they could remove 187 of them, and there's still plenty left. JDK 10 removed another 36 of those. Now, the housekeeping is going to continue. And I already mentioned this in terms of the Oracle JDK, because if you look at JDK 11, applets, browser plugin, WebStart, JavaFX have all been taken away from the Oracle JDK. But more importantly, in terms of the standard, there is a big change as well. The java.se.ee meta module has been removed from JDK 11. It was deprecated in JDK 9, and it meant that if you tried to compile against it or use it in the runtime, you would get an error. But it was still there, so you could turn it back on with a command line flag, and you could still use the module and the modules that it contained. So the things that are affected are Corba, which I know very few people are still using. There's the activation framework that's part of the Java Beans idea. And then there is something which I found there are a reasonable number of people still using, which is to do with the JAX-WS web services way of doing things, that's SOAP-based web services. All of those modules, all of those APIs have been removed from JDK 11. That's quite important to understand. Other things have already been deprecated, and they may well be removed in the future. So the CMS garbage collector has been deprecated. Nashorn, the scripting engine, has been deprecated. The PAT200 tools and APIs have been deprecated as well. These are things that could well be removed at some point. We're not sure when, but it could be removed in the future. So the important thing to understand is that backwards compatibility is now not guaranteed in the same way that it was. So Oracle have said new versions of Java may include breaking changes. They have said that they will give you a warning. So things that are going to be removed will be deprecated first, and that applies to features as well as APIs. And they will give you a minimum of 1 release warning, which is good, because if they had gave you less than 1 release warning, it would be no warning at all. So the important thing there is it means you could get only 6 months notice that a feature is going away, because it gets deprecated in 1 version, and then the next version it could be removed. Important thing to think about. So let's try and eliminate some confusion. As I said, a lot of changes to understand and a lot of things to try and figure out, well, what does that actually mean in terms of how things are changing? So the first thing is that Oracle have said, and I told you, that there will be a long-term support release every 3 years. However, that does not mean there will be 3 years of free updates. A lot of people think that that's what's going to happen. So they think, okay, the feature releases get 6 months of updates, the long-term support releases every 3 years, so we'll get 3 years of free updates. No, it does not. What's changing with JDK 11 is also the way that the Oracle JDK is licensed. And in the past, as I said, you had the Oracle binary code license for Java SE, which you could accept, and then you could use that JDK wherever you wanted within the constraints of the field of use restriction. Now, with JDK 11, the Oracle JDK binary will be free to download, but you can only use it freely in development, in testing, in demonstrations. If you want to deploy it into production, then you are going to need a Java SE subscription from Oracle. That's a commercial contract that you will need to sign with them. As of JDK 11, the only free JDK, and that's Oracle, only free JDK you'll get, is going to be one that's built from OpenJDK. So an OpenJDK binary, because it's open source, people can build that and can provide it for free. Oracle are providing it for free, Azul are providing it for free, AdoptOpenJDK are providing it for free. So there's different ways of getting it, but the important thing is you can still get free Java. Java is still free. The other thing that people sometimes get a little bit confused about, they say, okay, well, can I still use JDK 8? And the answer is yes. So the license for JDK 8 doesn't change. It's still under the Oracle binary code license, which means you can use JDK 8, 7, 6, 5, 1.4, any of the older versions, you can use indefinitely for free. There's no problem with that. If you're running JDK 8, you can continue to do so as long as you want. However, just remember that as of January next year, that's the end of free security patches and bug fixes from Oracle. So if you want to continue getting fixes, then you're going to have to figure out how you're going to do that. Oracle have also said, and this is important, that they will only lead and contribute to each JDK in terms of the OpenJDK project for 6 months. Now, they actually say for at least 6 months, but their plan of record at the moment, as of today, is it will only be 6 months. They may decide to continue doing it for a bit longer, but at the moment they're saying only 6 months. That means that when that 6 months expires, somebody will need to take over the leadership of the project and somebody will need to continue working on the source code. And that's for all JDKs, not just the feature ones, it's also the LTS. So JDK 11 is going to have 6 months of contributions from Oracle, and then when JDK 12 comes out, they will stop contributing and they will stop leading the project. Oracle are not going to backport updates. And that's, again, something which some people get a little bit confused about. So Oracle will contribute changes to the current JDK for 6 months, but when a new JDK comes out, they will not be contributing anything to previous ones, which means they will not be backporting fixes and then providing them in the relevant OpenJDK source code project. That means that the Java community or some other commercial entity will have to do this work for the long-term support releases or any other release. So if you're looking for backported fixes, somebody will need to do this. So if we look at the Java platform today, I said that we have stable, secure, and free. And as of today, you now need to choose 2 out of 3 of those. Why do I say that? Well, if you want your Java platform to be stable and free, you can do that. But what you're going to do is potentially sacrifice security, because let's take JDK 8 as an example. You can continue to use JDK 8. It's free, but after January, you will get no more security patches. Once the JDK 8 project is, once Oracle stop contributing to the OpenJDK 8 project, somebody else will have to take over leadership, and then somebody else will have to provide bug fixes and security patches for that. So we can have stable, we can have free, but we can't have secure as well at the moment. We can have secure and we can have free, but we're going to sacrifice stability. If we think about moving to the next JDK every time it comes out, then we can do that for free. We can continue to get our security patches by moving to the new version of the JDK every 6 months. But the problem is, because there could potentially be backwards compatibility issues, breaking changes, things removed, we're sacrificing stability. And then if we want to have stable and secure, then we're going to sacrifice free, from the point of view that we're going to have to pay somebody like Oracle to provide the patches for us and have long-term support. So this is as of today. Now, the important thing to get across here is that this may well change as of January next year, because right now we don't know what will happen when Oracle stop being project lead on JDK 8. It's very likely that RedHat will take over the leadership of that project. They've already done that with JDK 7. They did it with JDK 6. So it's very likely that RedHat will take over leadership of that project. It's very likely that they will work in conjunction with people like IBM, and fixes and security patches will be backported. But as of today, that has not been determined. How that will work has not been determined. So it's very important to understand that. As I work for Azul, I will just briefly mention Azul's Zulu Java. And what this is our free binary distribution of OpenJDK. What we do is we take the OpenJDK source code, exactly the same as Oracle do, exactly the same as AdoptOpenJDK do, and we run the build scripts on our build environment. We generate a set of binaries for different platforms, and then we run the TCK test on that to ensure that what we've generated conforms to the standard. And that way you've got very much a drop-in alternative to other JDKs. Just simply change your Java home, change your path, and everything will run without any problem. In terms of support, we actually go all the way back to JDK 6. We're now the project lead on the OpenJDK 6 project as well, so that we can upstream change patches and fixes into the open source project. We have support for 6, 7, 8. We're doing 9 and 10 at the moment, but because those are feature releases, we won't be doing long-term support for those. And then 11, we've got early access until next week. As soon as we've got the TCK sorted out and our binaries are available, that should be roughly about the same time that Oracle released their binaries. We have wide platform support. We cover the standard Intel 64-bit, Windows, Mac, and Linux. We also have 32-bit versions for Windows and Linux. There are a number of customers that we work with who want support for older operating systems. And then we have support for embedded systems through ARM32, PowerPC, ARM64, which could also be used in the data center as well. So you can download this for free, as I said, from azul.com, downloads Zulu. We also offer commercial support around that. So if you're looking for a commercial support contract, we do a very reasonably priced support offering. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Martijn, who is going to talk a little bit about AdoptOpenJDK's Java. Are you there, Martijn?
Sorry, I just had to unmute myself. So I was just answering all the questions on Slack. Hopefully that's been keeping people happy. Yeah, so AdoptOpenJDK. So the purpose of AdoptOpenJDK, it's both a community and a build farm. When Oracle announced that their new support and free updates plan, and alongside that also announced that they would themselves not be leading the support for more of the esoteric platforms like ARM32, Windows 32, AIX, ZOS, PowerPC, you name it, where Java does kind of happily run today. We thought we would get together and ensure that people could still at least get a free Java, both in terms of $free and free as in use. As a minimal baseline for the ecosystem. So just to make it very clear, AdoptOpenJDK does not provide commercial support. We do not maintain the source code at either OpenJDK or at Eclipse OpenJ9, although several of our contributors do contribute to those two code streams for their various organizations. But again, the idea is that if you need that absolute baseline, free as in free as in use OpenJDK binary, you can come and grab one from Adopt, basically. They are professionally tested, and some of them we actually push to the community TCK as well, so you have extra confidence that the OpenJDK binary we produce passes the Java SE specification that Simon mentioned before. And that is pretty important. It's not what I would call a quality mark, but it certainly is you shouldn't get any surprises swapping it in and out from another OpenJDK provider mark. So similar to Azul, we support all of the major platforms, plus a whole bunch of the stranger ones that you can see there at the bottom. And the other key thing about the Adopt community is that the infrastructure as code that we have is Apache 2 licensed. And it's completely free for people to grab themselves and for you to build your own OpenJDK, or your organization to build your own OpenJDK should you wish to do so. For me, speaking from a personal standpoint, I'm the CEO of JClarity. We're a Java JVM performance tuning company, so we're deeply involved in advising customers and ourselves on what Java to use. We find that using the Azul binaries for us is a reasonable commercial choice. We know Azul give us good commercial support. Oracle also have a new paid subscription plan for their support, which pricing seems to be fairly reasonable. And then for our community projects, etc., we tend to just grab whatever Wild West, sort of Adopt OpenJDK binaries there is out there. That's what I really have to say about that. So you can come along to AdoptOpenJDK.net. We've got about 400 or 500 people working on the project. The organizations behind it are folks like IBM. There are contributors from RedHat, Oracle, Amazon, Google, you name it. So part of the OpenJDK community, people are helping out. And as I said before, if you really need to rely on a completely unencumbered OpenJDK binary that's at least reasonably tested, and you're not concerned about commercial support, then that's an option for you to go to.
Okay. Yeah, I'd just like to say that Azul are now a sponsor of Adopt OpenJDK.
I'm so sorry, I forgot to mention that. Yes, as of today, very gratefully received. You can actually go to adoptopenjdk.net and /sponsors and see everyone who is currently sponsoring us, and you'll see Azul there at the top. And this is to actually give everyone some reassurance around OpenJDK and the future of Java. All of the major OpenJDK vendors and all of the major OpenJDK, I guess, ecosystem players, so people who use it, like Amazon and Google and Twitter and so forth, they are all actually actively working together to make sure that there are good, long-term, stable, secure, security update patched releases of OpenJDK going forwards. We've seen a lot of articles about, Java is no longer free, or Java is going to die because someone's not going to maintain it, etc. That's just simply not going to be the case. You've got very, very large vendors with very, very large budgets who are more than willing to put money and time and engineering resource into this because it's positive for their bottom line. So if nothing else, there is strong commercial interest behind Java, and people should be reassured that will continue. Someone's got to pay Simon's salary.
Yes. Good. Okay. Let's go back to
Inception.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so have I stopped sharing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Right. Okay, so I guess now we're on to questions. So
yeah, first of all, thank you. I think that was an excellent presentation. There were quite some questions in the Slack. There were also...
Okay, one thing I'll just say very quickly, because I already saw a question on Slack about this. I will put the slides up on SlideShare, and I will make sure that the vJUG, I'll tweet it, and I'll make sure that you know that where they can be accessed from. But I'll put the slides up on SlideShare under Speak Java. I'll probably do that either later tonight, this evening, or tomorrow.
Okay, so other than that, there were plenty of questions. Martijn did a great job at answering those live. From what he looks like, he was doing that from the phone, which is really, really...
got those thumbs, hasn't he?
Really, really impressive. So, but let's go through those. And Simon, if you have something to add, or sure, if you have a version of answer, or if Martijn, you want to clarify your answer or add something, then let's do that. So we start with a question by Duke at 7:12 p.m. right in the beginning of the session. And Who provides and supports Java Plus JDK with hard float support for ARM 32-bit? Now that Oracle don't anymore? Question mark.
Yes, so we do. Azul have a 32-bit ARM build that we create. That is actually a commercial. There is a free version that you can download, but we also do have commercial availability of that. We work with a number of significant users of ARM 32-bit and hard float as well. So yeah, if you're interested in that, you can have a look at our website, and you can always have a chat with us about that to see how to use that. But yes, we do have it. I believe AdoptOpenJDK, do you have a hard float version?
I don't actually know if we have a hard float version or not. I know we have the regular version. I would need to go and check if we've got hard float or not.
Okay.
But I suspect people who need ARM32 with hard float support probably need it for a commercial reason. And I would encourage people in that case to go to Azul or another commercial vendor to make sure that they get, that particular port maintained in a better than a just community best efforts basis.
We have a very nice group of people who actually based in Russia who do a lot of that work for us.
Excellent. Next question is, does Oracle JDK start as a copy branch of OpenJDK?
Yes, because the OpenJDK is the reference implementation of the Java SE specification, and it is the source code base that Oracle used to build their binary distribution. As I said, up until JDK 11, they were adding extra features to that. But as of JDK 11, it will be the same from the point of view of functionality. Donald Smith actually put out a blog post about this last week, I think it was. He was talking about the differences between the Oracle JDK and the OpenJDK. But yes, the source code base is the same. So, the hotspot VM, all of the garbage collection algorithms, everything is exactly the same in the Oracle JDK as it is in the OpenJDK because it's the same source code.
Yeah, and I would just like to say that Oracle should be absolutely commended for doing this. Right, They had a number of powerful features in Oracle JDK that clearly gave them a commercial benefit, and that they have effectively donated that to OpenJDK to make maintaining OpenJDK much easier and to make sure that there isn't this effective fork between Oracle and OpenJDK. That the diff between the two will remain minimal. Is I think really good leadership by them. I understand that some people might be frustrated or concerned that they've seen Oracle put together a new subscription model and are encouraging people to go and use their paid JDK. But as far as I'm concerned, Oracle's a big business and they've got every right to try and commercialize Java in a reasonable manner. And I think they're actually behaving in a reasonable manner around this.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I think that they're quite entitled to make some money out of Java, because if you work out how much money Oracle are spending on developing and maintaining Java and the size of the Java engineering organization that they have, it's not a small amount of money, even for Oracle sort of standards. It's not a small amount of money. So unless they make something from that, I mean, you can argue that, yeah, sure, it's the underpinnings of a lot of their other software, but they do provide it as a service to everybody who uses it in their applications. So I don't think it's unreasonable for them to try and get some money back for that, to at least cover their costs.
Another question from Stephanie about the technical compatibility kits. I think that was around the time where we talked about this. So the question, are TCKs freely available themselves, or do they still require acquiring a license in order to use?
So the answer to that is they are both. There's a free community TCK that's available, and there's also a commercial TCK. So it depends entirely on what you're trying to do. So in the case of AdoptOpenJDK, they use the community TCK without paying any money, I assume, because they are allowed to do that because they are simply building the OpenJDK and then they want to test it. For people like ourselves and IBM and other people who do things with JDKs, there is also a commercial TCK. And that's what you would use if you're actually modifying the JDK in the OpenJDK source code. So IBM create a clean room implementation of the JVM OpenJ9. They want to test that. They need a commercial TCK for that. We create our Zing JVM where we change the garbage collector and the JIT compiler. And again, we need a commercial TCK for that, because the kind of, if you look at the details, it says that you can use the community TCK if the JDK that you're testing is based purely on or primarily on the OpenJDK source code. So yeah, you can use that as a community for free. You have to sign a license with them. It's just a signature to say you're not going to give it to anybody else. But other than that, yes, it is free to use as long as you sign up to the agreement. Otherwise, you can get a commercial one. That's probably a very long answer to something which could be shorter.
Yeah, and also to make it clear, the Adopt community is actually investigating getting a commercial license as a way for Adopt to actually try and contribute back to the engineers at Oracle and other organizations who are actually putting all this effort into Java. So we're very grateful that we get a free community license, and it's been extremely helpful in making sure that the binaries we build are up to scratch. But again, that said, we want to try and follow the philosophy of morally trying to do the right thing as well.
Very cool. Another question from The Incredible Hulk. Question: how do you distinguish between commercial and non-commercial use?
That's a good question, and I must admit, I do not know the answer to that. That would be one that you would need to check with Oracle as to the exact wording of how they define commercial versus non-commercial use. I could speculate, but I won't. It's much easier if you just check with Oracle. The thing is that they haven't actually, until next week, when the I suppose actually, yeah. Well, until things stop in January, or until next week when the license changes for the Oracle JDK, I haven't seen any details about that. But I'm sure that once we get to the point where these things change, the specifics will come out. But you can always ping Donald Smith. I'm sure he'd be able to answer that question more precisely. He's on Twitter as DonaldOpenJDK, I think. He's the product manager at Oracle for Java SE.
Okay. Skipping the question about the slides, a question about Java WebStart. So for Java WebStart, there are open source alternatives, I believe, says Stephanie. Will those be used instead, or I presume in the JDK, in the future JDK? So will those be used instead, or will it just be removed completely with no replacement?
Right, so it's being removed completely from both the Oracle JDK, and because it was never part of the OpenJDK, so it's never there. So effectively, from JDK 11, there will be no WebStart in the OpenJDK or the Oracle JDK. As you say, there are some open source alternatives to this. There's a couple of projects that I looked at which were created quite a long time ago. They're sort of literally 10 years ago, where people tried to recreate the WebStart as an open source project, but those projects were mostly abandoned. The source code's still there if you're interested, but they haven't been maintained or updated for a long time. Interestingly, with WebStart, part of WebStart is the Java Network Launch Protocol, JNLP, which defines how the application is actually launched. That was a JSR, so JSR 66, if I remember rightly. So the specification is out there. But again, interestingly, the reference implementation for that was never made available as open source. So you can't even use that as a starting point, unfortunately. There are other alternatives that are sort of similar to WebStart, which are not quite the same. So they're not like a drop-in replacement. But there's things like GetDown, which is a different way of allowing you to download an application and install it on your machine in a similar way to the way WebStart works. And I know there's a company in Germany who were looking at, is it Germany or Switzerland? Karakun, who were looking at doing an open source implementation to sort of do the usual open source and then provide commercial support. But I don't know how far they got with that. So unfortunately, there isn't a simple alternative available as of JDK 11.
Okay. I'm skipping a couple of questions from Duke because we will try to approach all of them a bit later with their last question. So a question from Nick Price, and I'm also skipping the questions which received a definite answer by Martijn, which satisfied the party who was raising the question. So a question from Nick Price. As a software vendor creating Java-based software, do we need a license for Oracle JDK, or do our customers need one?
So again, I'll give you my understanding of what the answer to that is, but I would strongly recommend that you check, assuming that the question is relating to the Oracle JDK. I'll give you my understanding of that, but I would, as I say, strongly recommend that you check with Oracle about this. As a developer, you could still download the Oracle JDK and use that freely for development. So there's no issue with that. Your customer, who's deploying it into a commercial environment, would need a Java SE subscription. So you wouldn't need the subscription. It would be your customer who would need that. You could use the Oracle JDK for free for development and testing. But again, please do check with Oracle to make sure that you're not doing something that's outside of the license.
Yeah, I think the tricky interpretation, and again, definitely check with Oracle, would be if you are running that production JDK on behalf of your customer, right? So let's say you're a PaaS provider, for example, and you're running a JDK on your PaaS, and your customers using your PaaS environment. So I don't know the answer to that. Oracle, I'm sure, have thought this through very carefully. So yeah, again, contact Donald Smith or your local Oracle rep.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure in a PaaS environment, if you were running it for your customer, you'd need a license.
Gotcha. A question from Jan T. Kim.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the point of in designating LTS releases when there is no support beyond 6 months? I mean, whoever steps up to continue leading could choose any version they like. The idea that versions 11, 17, 23 ellipsis or LTS seems little more than an optional convention to me, or am I missing anything here?
No, you're not missing anything at all. You're absolutely right. Oracle have designated certain versions LTS, and those ones are only LTS for their commercial customers. Now, everybody that I've seen so far is following the idea of Oracle's LTS scheme. So AdoptOpenJDK have decided to use 11 and 17 and so on as LTS releases. We at Azul are doing the same thing. But you're right. There's nothing to stop people from offering longer support on any release if they're prepared to do the work. So, for example, Azul are also offering what we call a medium-term support. That's for every other release. So that would be 13 and 15. So we will offer support for those if people want to use them until 18 months after the next long-term support release comes out, so that you've got time to migrate from that medium-term support release to the next long-term support release. That's easier to describe with a picture. But yes, there's nothing that would stop people from selecting any of those to provide longer-term support for.
Okay, so a question from Duke. What choice will one have for JDK for ARM now that Oracle won't support it, regarding stable, secure, and free? Question mark.
Yep. So that is the same as the question we answered earlier on. So that's ARM support, which basically means that Azul, as I said, have a commercial version that we provide for ARM32 and 64. As I said, it's free because somebody asked about the hard float support. AdoptOpenJDK also do a build for ARM32. So yes, there are versions available for that.
So technically, I will rephrase this question. So technically, you can't get a stable or secure or free. Like all three are still on the table.
Yes.
In different combinations.
Yes. Yeah. As I said, this is what we have right now. And it's important to understand that we don't know what's going to happen once we get to the end of support for JDK 8 or support for JDK 11. As I say, we have to wait and see who steps up to become the project lead, who actually does the backporting work and makes it available in a timely manner. So that's what's not classically clarified yet. But that could well change when we get to that point and people actually start doing the necessary things.
Right. A question by Ymoto. How much gonna cost Java SE commercial subscription? And this question was answered by Robbie Ladd.
So that's Dalibor topic.
Yeah, with the link to Oracle Tech Network website about Oracle Java SE subscription FAQ. But if you have an answer, or if you can voice an answer.
It's not simple. If you read the Oracle, the link that was placed there, if you read that, Oracle basically charge you based on the number of what they call processors. And a processor is not a socket, it's not a number of cores, it's a combination of both. And the way that combination is calculated depends on which particular hardware you're using. Most people will be using an Intel x64 type architecture, or AMD, it's the same thing. So the way that they calculate that is based on the socket and half of the number of cores. So if you had a four core single socket machine, that would count as 2 processors. If you had a dual socket with hex core processors, that would count as 6 processors. And then there's a price for how much you would pay per processor per year, and that price depends on how many machines you want to license. So if you are licensing, and don't quote me on this, even though I'm being recorded, I think if you have like 1,000 processors over your machines, I think it goes down to $15 per processor per year. It starts off at $25 per processor per year, and then it goes down to in increments down to, I'm not sure, but that's the way you have to calculate it. If you talk to Azul, the price is significantly lower because we don't count processors or sockets, we count servers. And to us, a server is a dual socket machine with however many cores you want to put in there. And we basically do 3 bandings. We do up to 100 machines, 100 to 1,000 machines, and then unlimited. And so, yeah, that we just do bandings of that. The more machines you've got, the cheaper it works out.
Next question by Prashant Acharya. I'm sorry for probably mispronouncing that name. And it's a very important question to my mind. If I'm using Scala or some other language, but using the JDK as a base, how much of all this is relevant to me?
All of it. The reason I say that is because you're using Scala, most likely, in fact, almost entirely likely, is that you're running on top of a JVM. So you need a JVM from somewhere, and the JVM is supplied by the JDK. So even though you might not be using Java, the language, if you're compiling it to bytecodes and you're executing those bytecodes through a JVM, you will need to get your JVM from somewhere. And that's the important thing to consider. So Kotlin is not an alternative unless you're using it to write Android applications. But if you're writing server applications in Kotlin, you still need either to do ahead of time compilation or you need a JVM to run that.
Good. I think we are reiterating questions, and the last one, which we didn't ask yet, is by Silvio Marazzato. Could the binary implementation of OpenJDK be reliable for production environments?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, see, now this is where we get into an issue of terminology, because OpenJDK, remember, is the source code, and a binary built from that, so long as it's run through the TCK, there's no reason to expect it to behave any differently to any other implementation that's been built from the same source code and run through the TCK. So yes, it should be fine in the production environment. It really comes down to a decision that you need to make in terms of whether you feel comfortable running whichever binary and whether you want some form of commercial support to say, well, if something does go wrong, I've got somebody to call.
Yeah, and so just remember, you can go with the OpenJDK binaries that are built by Oracle, and they will obviously be TCK'd and very well tested. You just have to make sure you upgrade every 6 months. you can go with an OpenJDK binary from Azul or RedHat or IBM. You will know they're extremely well tested and they will pass the TCK. You can also get a build from AdoptOpenJDK. You will know it'll be well tested. Knock on wood, in the next month or so, they will also all be TCK'd, so you get that same level of comfort. And as a last resort, you can always build it yourself. Chances are you won't be TCKing your own build, and chances are you probably should not be putting that in production.
Okay, I'm actually, so if you don't mind if I just jump in, because I just saw something here. So somebody's saying, I understand that LTS to be supported until the next LTS is released. And that's incorrect, because as I've already said, the idea of LTS is a particular release. And if you talk to Oracle, they will be providing support for, I think it's 8 years for each LTS release. So it's not until the next LTS release comes out, it's 8 years. For Azul, we're actually providing commercial support for 9 years, and then 2 years of what we call passive support. So we're not producing patches, but if somebody has a problem still in those 2 years, we will analyze the problem and then provide a fix for that. So yes, there isn't a stop. There is overlap between long-term support releases.
Very cool. A question by Arthur about features being probably removed from JDK 11. We are using extensively SOAP web services on our legacy system using Apache CXF libraries. Does it mean that this will stop working beyond 11? Beyond JDK 11, sorry.
It will out of the box with JDK 11, but it's very easy to put in the third-party library into your Maven Ant or Gradle build. I'm assuming Ant, considering this is a good old legacy app.
Actually, I think the answer is yes, it will continue to work. And the reason I say that is because if you're using a separate library, so if you're using the Apache CXF library, then you're getting your web service support, your web service support from there, not from the JAX-WS library that was part of the standard. So the fact that that's been removed shouldn't affect you. So only if you're using the JAX-WS libraries that were part of the Java SE standard for JDK 11, that will affect you. So if you're using the Apache libraries, it should still work once you've got around the issues of moving to the modularity system and making it all work that way.
Yeah, I thought the Apache libraries backed onto the.
Yeah, okay, you could well be right, and then I could be proved badly wrong.
It's been a while since either of us have done SOAP development, I think.
It is, yes.
And my sympathies to the person who raised the question.
Yeah, so essentially, if something somewhere is using JAX-WS and the modules that were in JDK, then you will have a problem. Yes, but you can get those ones are actually reasonably easy to solve. Because there's modules available either through the reference implementation or through Maven Central. So you can actually get replacement modules that you can just download and put into your build. So it's a reasonably simple problem to fix for web services. The Corba one is a more complicated one because there isn't a simple solution to that. But web services, you should be able to find an easy way around that reasonably.
A really quick scan of Apache CXF's website seems to indicate it does still back on or somehow use JAX-WS.
Okay. I am proved badly wrong.
Nick Price asks, does a Jenkins build server count as production use or development?
And I would refer you to your local Oracle representative for an answer to that. I'm sorry, I don't know.
I personally have a question more about Maven, because say you were running Maven, is that a development or production use? Because it could be development because it's your developer's machine, but it's also that is the final step where Maven is actually run, so it could be production. So I would consult lawyers, but if you have an idea.
Yeah, I'll consult the Oracle representative. So I think that the way that continuous integration and continuous delivery pipelines work today starts to blur the lines a little bit, right? Whereas in the old days, we just actually threw a jar or a wire or an air file across the wall to your system operators who used to install it into your WebLogic or WebSphere or whatever. Those are long gone right now. So now Now, you could argue, I could see lawyers arguing, for example, that a Maven running on a CI server, which is actually doing continuous deployment to production, is actually adding production value, and there is, and therefore is commercial use, right? But again, I'm pretty sure Oracle will have thought about this. It's a common use case, and I'll definitely check with him. And I know Delibor's on Slack. I don't know if he is able to answer his questions off the top of his head, because he probably needs to look stuff up as well. But if not him, then again, Donald Smith should be able to answer. We should have brought them on the show, actually. Missed a trick there.
Excellent. I think we will now address a question by message by Duke, to which John T. Kim also pointed the attention that it may be worthwhile discussing. So, and it's a little bit long, but bear with us. Simon, Martijn, if you think this is a long discussion, which is better held in Slack in a written form, then you can say so and just then converge to Slack after the session. So Duke says, it all boils down to how often security patches are merged back into OpenJDK source. OpenJDK is predominantly developed by Oracle. Oracle branches its Oracle JDK from OpenJDK. 6 months after an OpenJDK release, Oracle does not merge its security fixes back to OpenJDK anymore. Oracle does, however, release security fixes for its Oracle JDK to its paying customers, implicitly disclosing security holes in OpenJDK. The left-behind OpenJDK will still contain the security holes. It will be unsafe and a sitting duck for attackers. This forces users of OpenJDK to switch to the paid-for, in apostrophes, Oracle JDK if they want to keep it safe. In my opinion, that Duke says, in my opinion, this is not responsible disclosure of security holes by Oracle. By not leading back the security fixes to OpenJDK, Oracle effectively coerces OpenJDK users to switch to Oracle JDK if they want to be secure.
I can happily say that is not the case at all.
Please enlighten me if I see it wrongly, says Duke.
Yep, well, happy to enlighten. So there is an OpenJDK vulnerability group which started last year. All of the major OpenJDK ecosystem players have a seat on that private body, and security vulnerabilities are discussed, patches are shared, fixes are applied, and those patches are made available to the entire group. So that definitely includes Oracle, right? So Oracle will make its patches available. Oracle may choose not to directly apply that patch to an older code stream, so after 6 months. However, that patch is certainly available for others to go and backport it, and you can be absolutely sure that they will.
Yeah, the important thing to understand here is that in some ways nothing's really changing, because if you think about, especially this particular question, if you think about JDK 8, that's okay. Let's take JDK 8 as an example. We were using JDK 8 when it was the prime JDK. And JDK 7, JDK 6 were older versions. So when you got a security fix to JDK 8, once JDK 6 and JDK 7 had stopped getting public updates, then you're right. The security flaw would potentially affect those unless you had them patched. So it's no different to how it worked in the past. It's just that the sort of time between the releases now is shorter. So it is still the case that, yes, if there's a security flaw that's exposed through a patch in the current release, it may affect older versions, but that doesn't change the way that things are working, because, like I say, in the past, once JDK 6 stopped getting public updates and JDK 7 stopped getting public updates, then those patches weren't being backported by Oracle. So if you were using JDK 6 or JDK 7, you could potentially have a security vulnerability in your Java. So it's no different to how it's going to work now.
I think just to add to that, I think what a key differentiator will be possibly between, say, the Oracle JDK branch, not branch, the Oracle JDK, which will be effectively private for its commercial customers, and the OpenJDK stream that most of the other providers will be working off, is that there may, for example, be a host of, say, let's call them stability fixes or particular issues that might be affecting Oracle customers, for example, which will, of course, be implemented in the Oracle JDK. Those patches will almost certainly be applied to OpenJDK, but for more recent versions, which means OpenJDK vendors like RedHat, etc., will have to see those patches going into the version above and make a judgment call on whether they want to also backport that. It's kind of the way that OpenJDK has always worked today, in effect.
Yeah. So somebody just posted a follow-up question to that. So are you saying that we will have patches available for us to backport? So the answer to that is sort of yes and no. But what I mean by that is Oracle will apply the patches to the source code for the current release. So let's say it's JDK 12. So they'll apply patches JDK 12. Now, they won't be available as a patch, but you'll be able to do a diff on the JDK 11 and the JDK 12 source code and then understand what the differences are. So you could then look at how to migrate that back. But no, they're not providing patches as such. Like it wouldn't be a set of web reps that you could take and then just go, okay, well, I'm going to take those web reps and move them to JDK 8 or whatever. You're playing Candy Crush, aren't you?
Answering more questions. I wish I was playing Candy Crush. I'm only up to level 400.
There are no questions. I think the last which I saw was answered by a link about long-term. Does Oracle plan to move away from desktop GREs and recommend deploying desktop applications that contain their own bundled JDK? That was answered with the link to the Oracle Technology Network website for Java client roadmap update from March 2018. And I think we don't have any more questions in Slack. So good job, congratulations. You've answered, I think, all of them.
Good. I hope it's been useful. It's certainly been enjoyable.
Yes. We see that there were messages like, thank you guys, fantastic session in the Slack. Thank you for the session. This has been educational.
Just double checking the YouTube comments feed.
Although look there, we don't fully support that at vJUG.
So okay,
they know that it should go and join the Slack channel and the meetup page, and they kind of just use the YouTube chat. We have proper processes in this community. No, I don't think there are.
I'm just saying that. I like the thank you for sharing your insights and your room backgrounds. I'd just like to say I'm sitting in my son's bedroom because he's using the office upstairs to do his homework.
Awesome.
Thank you once again for the session. The one last bit would be to share the slides, and we as vJUG will try to share them and post them on Twitter and the meetup page as the follow-up discussion post, so you can see the slides. If you're watching this later, not on the day of the live air, then please join the Slack channel because you can scroll back if you're not too late and the history is still within the 10,000 messages. You can find that all the answers. If you're unlucky and you cannot find the answers, or you came up with an original question that hasn't been asked, then please ping Simon at SpeakJava on Twitter and Martijn at Kariana on Twitter. I'm sure that information will also be in the slides. Anyway, thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you everyone for watching this. This has been vJUG, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, Oleg. Thanks, everyone.